Yes, we're all online, and we're all waiting for all those humans out there to do something. Hopefully something that generates income for us or otherwise moves our goals along towards some successful outcome. All that moving along is composed of individual discrete steps and decisions by living, breathing humans. So what exactly do they do? And how do they do it and why do they do it? If you don't know the answers to those questions in detail, then you don't know how to make it work in your favor. In this section, we'll explore how to uncover the critical steps that your users must take to move your goals along. As we start into this section on the doer, it's important to understand that doer is simply a generic term and it's a placeholder for what are actually a wide variety of specific online activities. The most common doer in this realm that we'll refer to is the buyer, and the key question there is, how does the buyer buy? But given that buying is only one of countless online activities that users can take, we can replace doer with many other activities, and we'll look at a number of those here in just a minute. So as we look at this doer in more depth, what we'll see is that it offers us a modeling and analysis approach that takes that idea of the narrative that we explored earlier, and it distills that narrative down to specifics on exactly when, where, how, and why these humans, these users, would ever interact with you online. Again, it's how the buyer buys, or how the learner learns, how the shopper shops, and countless other doers doing what they do, all within the context of your category of product or service. Now, knowing this is essential in any business or operation or endeavor that attempts to engage real people out there in the real world. And that's true whether you're online or not. As with many of the methods that we'll explore here, this concept of the doer and really understanding how people do what they do provides insights that's really not available any other way. And it's really crucial to your success. It goes way beyond human-computer interactions and online user experience, and it really has serious value and utility for virtually any role or function or program that you'd want to pursue or consider within your business or operation. And again, this is an extension of that narrative process that we explored earlier. Now, that narrative was almost entirely independent of your business or operation or any of your specific HCI systems. The narrative was designed to look purely at the day-to-day life story of your users as clearly and objectively as possible. The difference here with the doer now is that we begin to focus on your category of product or service. Not specifically your product or service, unless you're the only provider of the product or service and you own the category, which of course is almost never true. This then describes a specific set of user behaviors that represents the bridge or the connection between those users' objective independent life and precisely what happens when they decide to move in your direction. Now, there are a number of examples of doers, such as how the buyer buys, how the learner learns, how the restaurant manager manages, how the contractor contracts, how the doctor doctors, how the researcher researches, and countless other doers. And it's really very specific to your business and what you're doing online and what you're doing with your operations. Let's look at a specific case study and example here that will give you a better sense of how this works. Last year, I conducted a study for a company that sells traditional household products and home furnishings. Now, they wanted to make product selection easier for users on their website. Now, this was a company that had generations of strong customer loyalty to their brick and mortar stores. These were a whole series of real down-home, friendly, inviting brick and mortar stores. But their online sales were sluggish, and they were trying to figure out why so they could make it better. So we spent a lot of time initially with users on the client's website, but we didn't really uncover too much at first. We didn't really find too many insights initially. We found the sites were pretty easy to use, shopping was straightforward, checkout worked pretty well. So we moved beyond the website and looked at the larger question of how these buyers buy, how these doers do what they do. And we started asking their users, these loyal customers, to walk us through the entire process they used when shopping and buying. So we wanted to know exactly how these buyers buy. Immediately, they surprised us because they asked for printed copies of the catalog, their printed catalog. Now, we learned that this catalog was a favorite of these customers, these loyal customers. In many cases, these customers, these users, started with the catalog and wandered around in their homes or cabins or cottages or wherever, and they would compare colors and patterns and styles and whatever they had there already to the products in the catalog. And then, only when they had narrowed their choices with the printed info in the catalog did they turn on the computer and go to the website. That's when we discovered the major differences between the catalog and the website. There were differences in the language used, differences in the page layouts, differences in the way the products were organized, and even the SKUs and reference numbers between the catalog and the web were off in some cases. So in this case, the discrepancies and differences between the web and the printed catalog did not fit how the buyer buys. We didn't know about, and we certainly didn't appreciate the importance of the printed catalog in their buying process and how they wander around their homes and really make these choices about what appeals to them. And by the way, this is also an excellent example of seamless that we discussed earlier. This company had inadvertently created some pretty major seams between the physical catalog and their online experience. So let's explore why this is important. Remember, all online outcomes are based on users' decisions and their resulting actions. In our earlier discussions and exploration of narrative, we addressed the big picture of the user's daily lives. To be as inclusive and objective as possible, we intentionally did not focus on specific products or services. And now we're going to narrow in on exactly when, where, how, and why your product or service category appears in the user's life. This is the scene, if you will, in that user narrative where you come in. So you need to watch closely. That scene will reveal much about your value proposition in the lives and the minds of your users. Again, from a generic product category perspective. In the case study I just described, it's precisely when those customers wanted to find new drapes or towels or gadgets for their kitchen, and it included that printed catalog. So the question is, what triggered that action? Where did the user start that process? How did they determine what's available and then narrow down their choices? And then again, having them use the catalog first really gave us a first-hand look at how they actually do that in their real lives. Also, the surprises that we found in that case study really what led to the real insights. So the question here is, what surprises are you going to uncover when you start asking these questions about how the doer or the buyer does what they do? And then finally, you're going to be surprised at what those scenes reveal about your users and whatever value you offer when that value surfaces in their lives day to day. So here's what you need to know. The two biggest challenges with knowing how the buyer buys, how the learner learns, or how anyone does what they do online is deciding who those people are and how you're going to talk to them and include them in the process. And also deciding exactly how you're going to orchestrate the inquiry so you can uncover those types of insights that we just talked about. It's also helpful to break this down into relevant stages, such as what triggers them. How do they get a sense of your overall landscape? How do they get from that to a short list of their choices or whatever task they're going through? And then finally, how do they make their final choice? A further dimension to this, which I'll cover more in the Mastermind Academy, is the fact that most users, probably 80 or 90% of them, depending on your business and the types of website or online presence that you have, most of them are not ready to buy when they engage your online materials. So how will you stay on their radar? How are you going to stay in their consciousness and maintain contact with them through this entire process of when they're doing whatever it is that they do? And then finally, you're going to need to decide how you will convert all of those insights that you gain from this process, how you're going to convert all of that into action so that you are going to be sure that when you appear, you'll have the right impact and you'll provide the right value that you're offering the world when you appear to those users, when they move in your direction. So this is really a game changer, like a lot of the other topics and categories that we cover here. When you get skilled at this particular category of user insights, and when you can vividly articulate how real users behave, your powers of perception are going to transform. That insight into those real people is going to be a way for you to see the world differently than you did before. You will intrinsically begin to see nuances and cases and causes that you missed before. And you'll start to anticipate what you could only blindly react to before. And that's unfortunately part of the problem with a lot of this invisible online activity is we can only blindly react to it because we can't see it. So gaining a higher fidelity experience of nearly anything that occurs within your space will make that experience for you, it will make that more pleasurable and more meaningful. You're going to be more satisfied with the way you function once you develop these capabilities. And I can't tell you what those insights are going to be. You're going to have to go and ask and find out for yourself. And so you're going to have to traverse the process and really figure out how this applies to your business and your online presence. The most important outcome here is to clearly identify the specific user actions that represent the transactions that drive your business, your results, and your success. So how the buyer buys, how the doer does what they do, can be replaced with any number of other actions that describe real people doing real things of their own volition. When you understand what those things are, you can better align with them